Hello, we're here today to review Imperial Settlers. So, spoiler alert, if you've watched my review or my top 10 list, you'll know I think highly of this game. So, just give you that.
Right. And you get to pronounce the guy's name.
Ignacy Trzewiczek. I prefer it when you do it.
Sounds good, because
Yeah.
you get to laugh at me.
I think it's actually Steve Forbes is his name.
All I know for sure it's Ignacy, but I don't know.
I said Ignacy. You said
it's a potato, but I think it's Ignacy.
Okay.
But either way, I wouldn't be able to pronounce that last name either.
Right. So this is almost the purest form of an engine builder game that you'll find. It is also a resource management game to some extent, although it's much more a engine builder than anything. Because
A card management, so
yeah, I mean,
because
in a sense that you've got resources that are cards. I mean,
and then using cards to get resources versus building them.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So as far as quality, the cards are. I've had them sleeved forever, so I'm gonna pull one out. They've got a decent texture to them. They're pretty good thickness.
yeah.
And it's almost entirely cards. You have
Right.
some wood bits, you've got some cardboard, but most of it is the biggest thing is the cards.
But I do highly recommend sleeving it because you shuffle this. I mean, especially if you play
Yeah.
it any length of time, you'll be shuffling these cards a lot. Because ideally, technically, you're supposed to build a 30-card deck.
Yeah,
So
there's different options on how to play. If you were in a tournament of any kind, that 30 would be the requirement. But you can. It's got a deck builder aspect of it, like almost like a Magic style, or any kind of those kind of pre-built deck.
Living card
experiences,
games and
living
stuff
card
like that.
games, which is kind of neat. You don't see
It
that
is.
in a board game that's got resource management very often.
And with all the expansions they got out now, you got a lot of options.
Yeah, if you don't play that way, like the open form, you can use all the cards if you want, and it just makes the deck super thick, and you're not going to see a lot of the cards.
Right. But there is deck. I mean, even with the open format, I think there is still some rules. So like, you can only have like one copy of a rare, 2 copy of the uncommon, 3 of the common.
Right? Well, how do you even know which ones are rare, uncommon, and common?
There's markings on the card.
Oh,
So
I never saw any.
There's the dots. So like 1 is the rare. It's either 1 is common or 1 is rare.
Oh,
2 is uncommon.
I didn't even notice
and
those
3
there.
is the opposite.
Oh, I didn't know that. So
Wow,
didn't
I
play
knew
by that.
something before Andy did.
I'm
I'm impressed.
we then probably played it wrong.
Probably, but it just depends. You'd have to look through. There may not be more than 3. It's just with all the expansions add more cards for each faction.
Right.
So without looking at it, there might.
Yeah,
I'm not for sure.
it would almost be an administrative nightmare to play this game where you had to go and rebuild the decks every time. If you're in a tournament, I guess you'd be in for that, but we just played for the fun,
Right.
and we played with the entire deck.
Yeah, and I only saw maybe half my cards.
Yeah, I didn't even see that much.
So quality pieces, cards are okay,
Yeah, the cards
but
are pretty
everything
good
else
shape.
is just pretty plain.
Yeah. I mean, they did do the shapes on the
Yeah,
wood,
they did the shapes
and
of the wooden
stone
bits.
and apples or tomatoes or whatever you want to call them, the food.
But it's nothing too fancy, but
No.
it's very functional
Yeah.
for sure. And it's certainly better than a lot of games where it's just cubes. So,
Yeah.
they did do a little bit extra, so
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
So, what do you think as far as
I'd give it a 7 as far as quality components.
Yeah, I mean, mostly because most of it is the cards,
Yeah.
and the cards are a pretty good card stock.
Yeah.
That's really the most important aspect of this game. Scoreboard's a little lame. That's the one disappointment as far as I would say quality is that the way they designed it. I mean, the turn order, or the round order thing is not bad because you can actually see the rounds and everything. But
if you're not paying attention, you can accidentally go backwards on your
the
score.
way the score track wraps.
It doesn't really.
And they got
follow.
Some of the art covers up the wrapping, so
Yeah.
it's kind of a strange way, or it goes into the board, so it's a little bit strange. But yeah, I know I moved back a few times on it and had to correct myself. So yeah, I think overall though 7's probably a good score for this.
Okay.
Theme. as far as theme goes,
I think the theme is great because each deck is very different from each faction is very different from the other factions. So that's where the theme shines in this, is that each faction is unique.
Yeah.
I played the Atlanteans, and the Atlanteans are all about technology. So that faction and expansion specifically added technology tokens.
yeah, we should point out that we played with several expansions mixed
Yeah.
in with this. The Atlanteans is its own separate deck set. The Aztecs are separate. We didn't play with them though, but some of the cards
you got the
mixed
cards.
in.
Yeah, the cards are
Yeah, for all of the races or whatever not races,
but they're factions.
the
So you got
different
Romans, you got
right.
Egyptians, you got. We played the Atlanteans, but there's barbarians.
There's Amazons. There's
I can't even remember. I mean, we'd have to look at the rule book.
Yeah,
but I think there's 4 basic.
There's 4 in the base set.
That came in the base set.
Romans are one of the base ones.
Barbarians was one.
Yeah, that's another one. But they basically, each one of those sets that you buy as an add-on will also add on cards for the other sets.
Yes.
In addition to there's a
To
shared
their
deck.
own faction.
And so we played with whatever shared cards were already mixed in, and then we only played with the Atlantean faction. But there's a few generic add-ons.
Mm-hmm.
We had 3 as a magic number, I believe, was one of them, and
Why can't we be friends or something like that?
no, I think that one was one we didn't include.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't remember. Let me see. 3 is a magic number. Yep, you're right.
Yeah.
Why can't we be friends? There was another one I think that's let's be friends or something. There was some other friend-related thing that we didn't play with. It's still sealed. But there's so many expansions. For
Yeah, and I really like that each faction has its own flavor.
Yeah,
So
yeah, definitely.
So that's where the theme really shines, is picking the faction that you particularly like,
Mm-hmm.
and then adding in that extra level of deck building, if you really get into that, is even better.
Yeah.
So
So-
I think the theme is awesome. I'd give the theme I'd give it a 9.
It's kind of strange because I wasn't thinking theme that way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about the overall. It's like there's not a whole lot of theme outside of your deck, but
Right.
really, when you say it that way, your deck is definitely thematic. I mean, I was playing the Romans, and they're all about building their empire
Right.
and conquering. And granted, I didn't play it to conquer, and I usually don't when I play. So it's it's definitely designed for that functionality because you start out with your resources. Your base resources, swords for attacking, but I generally don't. I use it for attacking myself and raising my own buildings. But that's just my style of play. But yeah, I mean, each one feels totally different when you're playing. So from that standpoint, I was thinking more of that was a gameplay aspect, but in the theme, if you consider it that way, and the art does match each
definitely.
Nationality,
And
too,
the art's
whatever.
great. It's really neat art.
Yeah, so I would say probably I'm going to go an 8 on it because outside of your deck, there's no theme at all. It's just it's a pure engine builder without any real theme. It's just layered completely on.
Well, and the basic theme is no matter what faction you play, you're building your own settlement.
Yeah.
So your empire, whatever you want to call it, but you're building your own empire basically.
Yeah. And apart from the attacking, there's not a lot of interaction between players.
Except for one of the expansions did have what's called open production, which allows you to go to your opponent's production and use their stuff too.
Yeah.
Which is pretty neat.
Yeah, and there's a few, I think, in each one that has some interaction, but it's mostly you're focused on building your own engine.
It's minimal, to say the least.
we
Unless you really get into the attacking part of it.
We could have certainly interacted more, but we didn't. So, I think that we covered theme in some of the gameplay here, but let's talk about the rules a little bit. The rule book's really pretty. It's got the cover of the box on the cover of the rules, but there's a lot of pictures in it. A lot of it's very well laid out as far as the setup, the overview of how it works. There's the different round order, and it's there's a lot of notes in your note to make sure you don't miss things. I really like how it's set up.
The iconography is really easy to read and understand.
Yeah, I mean they took a lot of care in putting making it simple for you to
Yeah.
understand the cards and the icons on them. The only problem with that is they made them so tiny.
Yes, that is.
So
There's several times where I'm going to take my glasses so I can look at.
yeah, and it's some of these are lesser used things, so they're not in the base thing. So and some of them are the same, basically the same shape. You've got just different colors. So definitely, if you have a color blindness issue, this one will have problems for you.
Potentially, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, particularly those gears.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the icons are so tiny on the cards that sometimes you have to struggle to figure out what is that it's actually referencing.
Yeah, well, especially with those bird icons, I couldn't tell what the bird icon on the card was.
Yeah.
It didn't look like any bird to me. It looked like a blob.
So yeah, I mean, and the actions, and then they have the card and factions and details. So they actually explain for each of the factions in the base game all of the detail how it works, which is really cool. And then each of the factions, when you get them, has its own little manual.
And another part that I really like when I was playing, because I do have it myself, I don't have all the expansions, but I have most of them. But it reminds you on deck building for each one of these. So I really like that because the deck building, it's very specific on how you do it. And if you do it right. And if you don't have the rule book out handy, if you're just looking at this new faction that you got, it reminds you how to do it.
Yeah.
So I like that every single one of these reminds you how to do deck building.
I really want to try it where we actually build the deck
I do
sometime, because we've never done that, and I think that would be a lot of fun, especially with our background with playing versus, and you playing probably more than that, but me just versus. It'd be fun to get into.
I agree. I think it'd be really fun.
So as far as the rule book, I'm going to give this probably an 8. It's pretty well done. I mean, and it's actually maybe a 9 because it's got the rule summary on the back. I mean, there's really nothing I have really to complain about.
I was going to give it a 9 because I liked when I read through it. I thought it was easy to read. I do like the summary, but I really like how the faction, the expansions, it does exactly what it needs to do. It's short, concise, but tells you exactly what you need to know.
Yeah, the only complaint would be there's
it's
nothing,
tiny font.
Yeah, the font, but there's nothing I can see about how they would solve it. But because there's so many of these expansions, you're going to have all these sheets of paper lying about, and you could easily lose one of these.
True.
And have to. I mean, it would be nice if they somehow came out with a compiled rule book that included all of it.
I mean, at the same time, though, Board Game Geek usually has all the sets, so it'd be easy to get to.
Yeah, it's kind of a frustration. It's like you get it out and they've got all these loose pages, and it'd be nice to have one concise compendium of them.
I guess. I'll talk about that in gameplay. One critique that may be there.
All right, so we're both saying a 9 on the rulebook.
I agree.
Yep. All right, so gameplay. Like I said, this is one of my top 10, and the main reason is I love engine building. I like, I don't like people interrupting me while I'm building my engines. There's nothing that frustrates me more than thinking I got my engine going and somebody interrupts it, which this game can happen if you're playing where you're attacking.
Because it's called raising. So you can either raise a card from your hand, and in the top right hand corner of the card, if you can raise it, some you can't. But if you can raise it, it'll give you basically resources. Some of them give you victory points, or you can attack your opponent for an additional cost of the sword.
Yes. And that's one of the reasons I play Romans, is just so I can intimidate other people.
Right.
If they were going to attack me, you're probably choosing the wrong person, because I will attack back with all of my force.
And he will threaten you. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
So you attack me, I want to attack you. Stabby, stabby, pokey, pokey.
So it's more defense that I play than offense. The best defense is carrying a big stick. Isn't it? All right. So yeah, as far as the gameplay, though, you start out with 2 cards from your faction and 2 cards from the main deck. And what's interesting about this is normally your first round you don't get production because your starting resources are your production. But in this game, that is just the base, and then you start your production round. So you get another 2 cards from the main deck that's common.
And every faction has its own production, too.
Yeah.
So what you start with is completely different than what I start with.
But I'm talking about just cards.
Right.
You're going to start out with a handful of 6 cards.
Right, and that's where it could make or break you. Because if you draw cards that have you can't build anything, you might be screwed. And so that's where the deck building part would probably really come
Yeah,
in
that
handy.
would benefit.
Is-
Certainly, with this round, it would have
Yeah.
benefited me because I got no production the first round, which was
And
awful.
all I got was one.
Yeah.
Initially, so
But the thing is you're not completely stuck because even with
Right.
what we had,
you do get your starting production.
You get your starting, and there's options you have. So first of all, there's 3 categories. You have production, you have features, and you have actions on your, and you have 2 sides to your board. So you've got your basically your starter board is in the middle, and your common ones that come from the central deck that is shared
are the green.
They go on the green side of your board, and you can build out from there as many of them as you need, and you just have to have the resources to build them. On the right or on the left side, you build your faction ones, but
and it's color specific.
They're color specific to your country or whatever. But you generally have to sack off one of your cards from the other side, from the common side, as a foundation for that building. So you're going to be spending these common buildings, so you can use them for while you have them, but eventually you're probably going to get rid of them.
So it's a neat idea where you have to pay attention or have to use these cards in the common deck in order to build up your faction.
Yes, because your faction cards, apart from the Atlanteans, will be your primary source of victory points at the end of the game. So building out a bunch of those is going to be most beneficial to you. The other thing is, in most nationalities, they cannot attack your buildings that are your faction buildings. They can only attack the commons. So once you've scored those victory points, they're banked. And I think the barbarians are the only ones can attack your buildings on that side. So each country has its own, or each team has its own abilities, faction, whatever. Each one has its own abilities that are unique to it.
Right.
Also, the other option you can have is you can spend one of the food sources to turn your not faction specific cards upside down and treat them as a production. So
it's called making a deal.
Yeah, you make a deal, you get to put it upside down at the top of your board. So if you do get stuck and you don't get any production like we did this game in the early game, you can still get production from that. So there's ways around it.
Right.
And
that counts as production as well.
Yes.
So you get those.
And you also, as soon as you build any kind of production facility, you get the benefit
you get the production
of it at one time immediately. So you get to use it that round, which is really cool.
There's been a lot of cards, especially on the Atlantean side, that what I used to spend it, I got back because it produced it. So.
And there's also a lot of them have a builder bonus where you get a one-time bonus for building it too.
And it could be something completely different, like a wood when you use the stone,
or an extra person,
it's just really neat how they design it. I mean, it's really balanced for the most part.
Exactly.
Except for, as Randy mentioned, my building doesn't score points at the end of the game.
Yeah.
So ideally, I should have been able, or maybe because there's so many cards in my deck, but I wasn't getting enough faction cards to generate victory points. So I was scoring really well in the early game. But at the end of the game, my deck just sputtered out, and that's where Randy just blew me away.
Yeah. I mean, I got lucky with a lot of my cards.
Well, and that's why you love the game so much, is that engine was rolling.
Well, I saw some cards that I'd never seen before, especially from the common deck. I was like, oh, I've never seen this, but it gave me foundations that I didn't have to have, which is, the foundations are what kill you, because then you're losing your cards you've already built. And I was able to avoid that a lot, which never has happened. I don't think I've ever built that many faction buildings in my entire life. As far as
it worked well for you this game.
It definitely did. So, there's definitely, a whole slew of cards to explore. I mean, this is the common deck minus the ones we've already built. I mean, there's...
Right, it's a huge amount of cards.
Huge stack of cards. Plus, we've already built some of them, and there's more factions and things we didn't include.
Yeah, you got at least one expansion that I could see that you didn't even open yet.
Right, that's the Amazons. I've got one in the box that I haven't opened. So, I mean, this stack is just going to grow.
Yeah.
And the commons, I don't think we filter, even if you did play by the deck building rules. So that deck is just going to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, this just gets bigger as time goes.
So, I mean, I didn't build 30 cards, so I could have continued. I mean, I probably would have resulted net the same about.
So I think the only thing that I have as far as a critique is I don't know if they're going to make any more factions for it, because they got the new game out, and that's Empires of the North.
Oh yeah.
So that's like the sequel to this game.
I haven't
And
played
yeah,
that yet.
you got it, but we've never opened it up. And I hear it's just as good as this game. But they're actually making factions for that game, not this one anymore.
Ah.
And so,
Well, to be honest, I really don't. That doesn't bother me because
it didn't bother
so
me
many
a lot.
cards already in the deck.
Yeah, but it's just, if you like this game, why worry about trying to get another game and kind of starting over? It's like Legendary.
That's blasphemy,
No, it's not. But, well, I mean, they're not remaking Legendary, thankfully, because that would
Well, yeah,
suck.
if they
That
remake-
would suck
if they
if they
made the
redid
exact same
Legendary
game.
that didn't make it compatible or anything. I would be upset.
Yeah.
And so, this is not compatible with Empires of the North. But Empires of the North, I haven't played it, so it might be just as fun as this. But there is, I think, a limit to this game. So just understand that. Not that that's ever going to. You'll ever see
I
every
can't
card
imagine
because of
any
all.
game that there's unlimited is ever that's never going to end. I mean, every game has only a finite number of expansions. Otherwise, your house would have to be growing exponentially.
Like yours did.
Well, there's reasons behind that we won't get into on the video. But yeah, so I mean, I think it's reasonable size for this game. I think it's already reached its
I guess.
maximum, and if you got too much more, it would become overload. But the way this whole thing meshes together is just phenomenally designed.
Really well done. Ignacy must be a genius because to be able to balance it out as he did and have all the cards that are in this game that are there, it's just it blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, to be able to add on, I mean, it's hard enough to balance factions within your decks
Right.
when you're playing. To make it so that you can add on to it and still keep it balanced every time, it takes a lot of effort. I mean, we've already seen with Versus when we played it, the later ones had to be kind of broken. So, and then there was always errata where they have to ban cards
Right.
and all of that. There was no banning of cards as far as I know from this game.
I don't know, but we never did
Yeah.
tournament, so who knows? There might be limitations.
But this satisfies my desire of playing like deck building games like that. It satisfies my engine building nature. It's not competitive where you're attacking each other. It's resource. I mean, you can, but
it just scratches
it's
a
not
lot of
heavy
itches.
heavy attacking.
Yeah, it scratches a lot of itches.
Yeah, I mean, it's got everything I like to see, and you can score points many different ways.
Right.
And it's cool to figure out how can I generate those points, and how do I trigger, and I can do this to do that, and just to figure
And
out
that's where
that
the deck
puzzle.
building part is even better because you might be able to build it 2 or 3 different ways and score multiple different paths.
Right.
Just by building a different deck
Yeah, I mean,
for the same faction.
I just love trying to figure out
Yeah.
how can I maximize my interactivity of my buildings that I build, and that's really cool.
It's just a great game.
Yeah.
So what would you score it overall?
I'm probably going to give this one a 9. The only reason I don't give it a 10 is because I feel like, first of all, I do think some of the factions, while they don't suffer heavily on balancing, I think the Atlanteans might be probably the one exception where it's not perfectly well done.
Well, there's a lot
of
of cards that I didn't get to see, so there very well may be. It may be perfectly balanced with everything else, but because we played with all of it, it didn't really get to.
That's the only balancing
see it
issue I've
shine.
seen in the game so far. But apart from that, I really don't have any faults with it. I mean, it's got everything I like.
I think a 9 is a perfectly good score because it's, like you are really. It has to be something special to be a 10.
Yeah.
And so I don't think it's quite there, but it's a phenomenal game. It's a lot of fun, and it's a high 9.
Yeah. And I will say this: the rule or the box says it is a 45 to 90 minute game.
They lied to you.
No, it is not. It is, depending on the number of players, it gets exponentially long.
Yeah.
It's because your first turn it flies by. I mean, because first round you don't have any cards out, but as you start building out your engine, each round gets progressively longer.
I guess that could be a critique for some of you who can either has a group that with someone that suffers from AP, or if you yourself know that you have AP issues, that could be a concern for you.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully,
because if you get a handful of cards, you're like, oh, what am I going to do?
But the good news is you do have between your turn and the turn.
Yeah, you
when
got
it comes
time to
back
think
around,
about it.
You got time. I mean, with 2 players, you had less time. So there was a little bit of maybe hesitation on it periodically.
And usually I hate too much time in between my turns, but you need it for this game.
Because you're thinking about I can trigger 15 cards. Which one?
There's
is
no
gonna
way you
make the
can
most
take a
sense
nap
triggering that,
like
or-
I can with other games.
Yeah,
you got to pay attention.
You got to pay attention. I mean, there is the possibility somebody's going to interact with your game, your area, which is it's not common.
Well, if Jonathan would have played, there'd have been attacking all over the place.
Oh yeah,
because he would love that.
Well, yeah, that's why he usually just abandons us. What are you talking about? As we've seen,
right?
So
it's a great game.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this one is one of my top 10. I think if you enjoy engine building at all, this is like the purest form of it. I can't think of another game that is a more simplistic capturing of just the essence of engine building. And
maybe Gizmos, but it's a lighter game, so I would recommend this in a heartbeat before Gizmos.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not that. I mean, I'd call this. We didn't really talk about complexity. I'd call this a medium. I don't think it's.
I would say it's on the lighter side of medium, just because it really isn't hard to play.
Well, no.
I mean, if you got bad eyesight, that'd be the only thing that would really hinder you playing this game, because everything's so small.
There is a lot of learning. I mean, especially if you're going to get into the deck building aspects of it.
Yeah, I guess.
I would not call this. I would call it a solid medium. I don't think it's a heavy medium. It's. I mean, it really is. You're going to probably be better at it if you're more experienced with heavier games. But I don't think it's a heavy medium. It's probably a solid medium, including the fact that you're going to potentially build decks out of it. So but it is accessible. I mean, you can play it the way we play it, where we don't mess with it because it's just so many cards. That you can just play it straight, and it would be much lighter.
True.
But it is a very accessible. The art's cute. It's got little cartoonish guys, tiny little people on them. But there's a lot of little cartoonish humor to it. There's not. I mean, it's not real humor, but there's in the box. There's the insert. There's hidden cartoons.
Yeah.
If you get the box, look for those.
Right. It's really cool.
Yeah, so it's really a cute game, and I mean it's really, for looking as cartoonish as it does, it's really hidden. It got a good solid game inside. So I highly recommend this one if you like engine builders. If you don't like deck building and don't like engine builders, it's probably not the game for you. So that's our assessment of Imperial Settlers, and please, if you enjoyed what you heard or saw, hit the subscribe button, follow us, send us a
notification
comment,
bell, hit the like,
send us
give
likes,
us comments,
whatever you feel like doing.
Yeah.
I would say send us mail, whatever. But we don't have mail on this.
Yeah. But let us know if there's a game that you want to see us review. We'll be happy to do it, because if we don't have it, between me and Randy, we could probably get it pretty easily. So
yeah, we do now have a presence on Facebook, as far as we have Legends of Nerdvana
on Facebook,
Facebook site. So we posted on there a list for people to go in and make recommendations.
And we're developing a website as well.
Yeah,
so
we're in the process.
We'll have that
it's
available.
It's up and running.
It's
just
up.
very
We're working on
rudimentary. We're still early phase of it. But certainly you can visit. It's www.legendsofnerdvana.com. And we do post the videos from YouTube on there. I'm not sure if all of them are there, but we do post some of them and then link to the YouTube. So
Check us
lots
out.
of ways to access us now. So we're becoming a real boy.
Oh.
All right. Well, until next time.
Have a good night.
Good gaming. Bye.
Bye.